What up, my freaks? RuinusInsight here with part 63 of my Total Warhammer 3 modded Belegar Ironhammer campaign. So as we saw last time, Belegar hit the Vale of Titans, destroying the orcs and undead gathered around there, congregating there for I know not what reason, considering they're not really allies, but they're not really enemies. Perhaps just to get away from us. Either way, with Belegar having destroyed that, it looks like he is no longer needed here, and we're going to start heading him out to Cathay to solve some of the problems there and hopefully destroy Deathmaster Snitch as well, though of course Snitchy will be back. Now, we did leave off last episode before a major battle, which is what we're going to get up to this episode. Khemri is here, Cetra is defending. It is a tier 4 settlement with a lot of, let's say, concerning enemies that we're going to have to deal with, namely the Ushabti of various kinds, lots of Necropolis Knights, just generally a ton of constructs, like at least half a stack full, actually way more than half a stack full. And I wonder, is this army close enough? Yes, and that army is also close enough, so yeah, this is looking like it's going to be a toughie. Between the episodes, I did assign a couple of items to these guys, like a Armor of Fortune and a Hammer of Karak Eight Peaks to Alaric Ranulfson, which, you know, it's about time for him. He definitely deserves it. He's been waiting for a long time, longer than any of our other lords, and he deserves some nice stuff. Otherwise, I don't believe there's actually anything to do but to attack, so that's what we're going to jump into. Am I forgetting anything? If I am, it's too late to think about it now. Pyrrhic Victory, ooh, that's interesting. Let's see how we can, if we can manage to pull that off. Also, yeah, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure he also has some runes, but obviously he can't use them from here, but oh well. I'll put the Scarecrow banner on the 2 Brimstone guns. We have a Rune of Slowness, which I guess we'll put on you. Wait. Rune of Slowness, yeah, that's a, like, mini slowdown reduction around Durgrim, which, sure. And then Rune of Seeking, obviously, is going to go on our best cannon. And that is about it for what we can do here. We're as prepared as we're gonna be. I suppose we could siege if we really wanted to, but with Cetra in March stance, I think we're probably not going to get a better, opportunity, especially as there are more enemies around. Let's see if we can make it less. Alright, indeed, my dwarfen friend, here we go. The guns of, well, not Zufbar, I guess. What do we count our guns as? I'm just gonna say the guns of the Dowie, I guess, but yeah, they thunder, they fire, and they bring the enemy towers down, basically with a single volley. That is only the beginning of this battle, however, and I do mean just the bare inkling of a beginning. Strap yourselves in, gravies and lentilmen, this is going to be a long one. There is so much to work through, a lot of enemy elites that we're going to have a difficult time with, and on top of that, this particular army is just plain bad at sieges. Guns are not great at that sort of thing. Maybe if you have Chaos Dwarf Fireglaves and the ability to climb walls and then start firing down, but these kinds of guns, they're just not strong enough. So we're going to have to try to do this the more or less slower way, as we can't fire up on the walls, which means we break down as many of those walls as we can so that we can fire into the enemy settlement from outside, and then slowly make our way forward. Anyway, the battle will begin with our bombardment. I want to see at least one of the wall sections get brought down by our cannons so that we can watch the enemies fall. There we go. Oh, look at the flail. It's kind of cute. I don't know why I think it's cute when the skeletons do it, but it is. And there we go. And the way those things sink into the ground. And definitely an interesting design choice, and it looks like this unit will actually be fully destroyed as we bring down another wall section. That said, not super interesting to watch cannons fire away for 8 years at wall sections, so I think we're going to speed on through this part as we still have so much to clear. Now, there are a lot of very threatening units in the enemy army, but the Ushabti with Great Bow absolutely take the cake, and then, of course, the enemy Screaming Skull Catapult. Yes, it's only a single artillery piece, but it can arc over walls and our relatively lightly armored Thunderers, or light on HP at the very least. But really everything here is not elite enough to survive a lot of hits from one of those artillery pieces, so yeah, it's going to be a concern. Anyway, the last of the breaches is about to be made into the wall, at which point we'll be able to start moving forward. In fact, we already have, while our cannons are going to do their best to try to focus down the enemy Ushabti with Great Bow. Don't know how effective they will be at this, and my general experience with cannons and fighting anything or hitting anything is not very effective, I mean. But they'll give it a try, and maybe they can at least knock a few of them out. Maybe we'd even be better trying to target the enemy Necropolis Knights or something, but they unfortunately move too fast, and or those are actually Sepulchral Stalkers. They move too fast, so it's unlikely that we can accomplish anything doing that. So, Ushabti with Great Bow it is. I'd actually love to target the Sepulchral Stalkers as well, but unfortunately the latter are hidden in, well, stock, unless we can't see them. Anyway, it looks like the cannons are getting at least a few shots on those Ushabti with Great Bow, at least the ones that are standing right where we've torn a few holes in the enemy wall. Oh, I like the way that our aerial units are hovering overhead behind our army, though, and the gyrocopters. And look at our nice little army, the thunder of guns. Every single one will miss as they try to fire up on top of that wall and hit those Tomb Guard up there. And ooh, it looks like the first of the Dowie blood has been drawn by the Ushabti with Great Bow as they try to fire on our Thunderers with Grudge Rakers and Grudge Lakers. The Grudge Lakers are the dwarfs who dwell on a lake. These guys are doing a pretty decent job already. 36 kills and 4.5k damage. One of our Thunderer with Grudge Raker units is already at about half HP. Hopefully the cannons can take this unit out before they can do too much more damage, because the Thunderers are sure not going to be capable of doing so, because they have a very difficult time firing through these breaches. Unfortunately, these little things count as elevations, so these units don't really like to fire. They're too high, apparently. As in, the rubble is too high, so the only way to fire is to actually move them forward into the breach, which is, well, it's going to be concerning. Again, a few shots, or a few more shots, or a few hundred more shots onto those Tomb Guards with halberds up on top of the enemy wall, but hopefully at the very least our 4 Quarreler units, which have come in as reinforcements, will be able to dish out some damage. Ooh, it looks like we can actually get a few shots from a few of our, was it Grudge Rakers, or I can't quite tell. Somebody's firing at those Ushabti. I think a regular no, these guys are firing upwards on top of the wall. Yeah, I think it was just our Quarrelers that were firing on the Ushabti, but at least somebody is doing it. And as I said, this one's gonna take a while to break through the enemy walls like this. Now, I'm not really worried about the regular or the Thunder Rakers to actually run out of ammunition like this. They have a decent amount of ammunition, and frankly, it's unlikely that they will run out before the enemy is dead if we manage to win here. Who will run out of ammunition is our miners, as we've set them over here, since we couldn't attack the enemy Tomb Guard up here directly. We can at least chuck some blasting charges up there. Damn, I was hoping the explosions from those would actually knock a few more enemies off the wall, but it doesn't look like it does that great of a job. Honestly, a single unit of Fire Rain rockets, or Hellblaster or Hellstorm rocket batteries rather, here would have absolutely cleaned house against these Tomb Guard. I might put at least one of those units in this army. Yeah, I know we've been by and large sticking to a Thorax army and that. And the Fire army will have flame cannons. Oh, you missed it like most of those shots. Come on, guys. Yeah, really, only 3 get knocked down from that. You'd think the blasting charges would have a little bit more force, as I don't imagine the skeletons have a lot of mass, and also not very fire resistant, but it's okay. It looks like some of the enemies are approaching us, and it looks like we're going to pop into the city a little bit and start firing in there. To the degree that we're capable of, anyway. Once again, it's not the easiest thing for these guys to do, and yeah, see, even now, and they don't appear to... There we go. These guys have to basically go directly in front of them, and they're taking very little damage as well. Yeah, so far not super impressed with the Grudge Rakers, at least against blobby units like this. And they do seem to destroy single entities quite handily, though, like all those shotgun blasts focused on a single, like Cambrian War Sphinx, for example, or I don't know, any single entity, really, does destroy them fairly quickly. But at the end of the day, funnily enough, the flamethrower units, the Iron Drakes, or Fire Drakes as I have a tendency to call them, they also do quite well at hitting single target units, which is surprising considering they're flamethrowers. But they also absolutely decimate these guys. Then again, they can't fight in melee really at all, whereas the Thunderers and Grudge Rakers can at least a little bit. And ooh, I see a Screaming Skull fly on by, which I do believe means that the enemy artillery piece has actually sighted us. Otherwise, it looks like the enemies are moving all their Tomb Guard in to plug the breaches, which I'm sure they can do so, but we still have a lot of guns out there. And if they show themselves, they're going to get gunned down. Unlike these poor Nehekara horsemen who tried to chase off the and this unit of Grudge Rakers here. And those said Grudge Rakers did do a little bit of damage. I do enjoy watching them fire in basically melee, though. It's quite entertaining, even if they aren't crazy effective. But hey, it's all about variety in armies, which is why we built this army like this. Not so much about how effective it is. Plus, I just love watching them fire. Anyway, it looks like the Ushabti have also arrived and are also going to plug the gap. There is a Scorpion leading them as well, and thus we have sent Alaric to try to help out against all this, but our guns are gonna have their work cut out for them. Fortunately, though, with the enemy popping out like this, we don't have to fire over the lip of this hill, or this, I don't know, rubble. Which means we can do some very decent damage. This first unit of Ushabti is already in very bad shape, and ooh, looks like the enemy has a Tomb Prince nearby and has activated the Curse of Joff, which has forced us into Rampage. This is not so great, because it forces this unit, for example, or at least it forced this unit to run forward by virtue of its Rampage and thus get more damage. That said, if anybody tries to chase it, there will be guns all the way out here to get them down. Alright, keep firing on that Scorpion, which should probably take a few more hits. It's down to a little bit under half HP, but that's a lot of guns focusing it. If nothing else, this army's really fun to watch. Alright, here comes some Ushabti to once again attack our Grudge Rakers, but it looks like the enemy Scorpion is pretty much done for. Down it goes. Fare thee well, Dreadnought. Though you are a very cool unit, and I am jealous of the fact that we don't have you. Or access to you, I mean. Alrighty, now it's time to overwhelm the enemy Ushabti as well. They really shouldn't have come out here, and we do have some Dwarf Warriors to help out in melee at least a little bit. Our miners are also starting to break down more walls in order to make more breaches in the enemy settlement. If nothing else, we do have range superiority as long as we can fire through them. But the enemy decided to counteract that by charging into the back of our miners with a unit of Carrion. Fortunately for us, we do have a unit of Thunderers relatively nearby, and they will gun the Carrion down. Similarly from the back, a taste of their own medicine. And though I'm sure that we will have done a decent amount of damage to our own miners there as well. Otherwise, more enemies are streaming to plug the breaches in the enemy walls. There is a Overcast Rune of Wrath and Ruin coming in to damage those Tomb Guard. And ooh, the enemy's gonna get that Joff's Curse of Blades? Joff's Incantation of Cursed Blades, close enough. Poppins that it does that bleed effect and allows the enemy to do fairly considerably more damage. Though it's obviously better when you're in contact with multiple enemy units, I think, unless, wait, does bleed have an entity count maximum? Yeah, it does. 4 damage, 5 entities, alright, so then it's fine. Against a single unit is what I'm getting at. Anyway, there's another Scorpion milling around out there, and it looks like an enemy army has spawned an ability, so the enemy has reached the 3rd level of the Realm of Souls and has popped those Ushabti on top of our cannons. We did keep back 2 units of Dwarf Warriors back here for specifically this purpose, and hopefully they can keep our cannons alive. 14, nearly 15 minutes at this point of straight-up combat, and we're still not into the enemy settlement. We've also moved in our flyers, unfortunately peeled away from our army, and just as the enemy Ushabti spawned, because they're knocking down other Ushabti with those brimstone guns, which they're okay at, if nothing else. They're not crazy at it, not crazy good or anything like that, but they can do very solid damage. And ooh, more flyers come in, but they are met with fire in the air, and those carrion get cooked and drop from the sky. Actually, pretty nice shot. Still more Tomb Guards stream towards the breaches, and we are still trying to hold. Essentially, every unit that gets badly damaged, it gets backed off into forming the 2nd line, and the 2nd line continues firing, while these guys continue to act as pseudo-melee. Yes, I could have done this with the Dwarf Warriors instead, but the way I figured it, we were actually better off saving the Dwarf Warriors to actually enter the enemy city when we're able to do so. So I'd rather the Thunderers with Grudge Rakers get hurt, because once again they can still fire with the ammunition that they have remaining. At the very least, we are starting, or the enemy numbers of Tomb Guard are starting to dwindle at this point. The enemy Ushabti nearly done for, at least the summoned ones are, though it looks like we lost at least 1 cannon. Completely surrounded by the Dwarf Warriors here, including the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, which were waiting on the other side. And a little bit of help from those brimstone guns. This would have been a lot easier if we had Longbeards and more elite units, but it's not the time for that yet. After all, it's still only turn 65. We just plain have not been able to unlock those units yet. Anyway, it looks like the Ushabti are down. The bounce of power is actually in the enemy's favor by quite a bit at this point still. Damn. Alrighty, well that's a concern, but if the enemy continues to move its troops out here, then that'll definitely go in our favor. Alaric charges those enemy Ushabti as we try to back away, or actually rout this Thunderer unit, because it got too badly damaged by the enemy, and probably at least a little bit by our own units, but that's okay. Now the other Thunderers continue to move back into the breaches or into the gate, and continue annoying the enemy. Either they're allowed to sit here and fire into the enemy settlement, or the enemy sallies into the breaches, or in our own units outside are able to hit them. So it's working reasonably well, I would say. Nothing crazy, mind you, but pile of dead chariots there. Okay, the chariots were never alive, and, well, I guess nobody here is alive. You know what I mean. A destroyed chariot, something like that. And I did want to try to get the Iron Drakes in here to burninate some jerks through these gaps, but unfortunately they got immediately targeted by the Screaming Skull catapults, and a single or 2 volleys, perhaps, badly damaged them. So, unfortunately, we can't have them really do that as yet. Let's see if we can't get the Scorpion drawn out as well, and it's going to pop that jumping animation, or burrowing animation, I should say. And then it's going to start getting targeted by all of our ranged yet again. We don't even need to move our melee, or want to move our melee in, because they'll simply get hit by our units. Don't do it, guys. The Grudge Rakers will end up killing you. Or maybe they won't, as the Scorpion gets brought down. And another corpse to add to the pile in this breach. Man, what a grind of a battle, and well, if it isn't an enemy Tomb King, not Cetric himself, mind you, who appears to still be staying inside the enemy settlement, but he is out here and he's going to take a lot of damage. Looks like he wants to go after the miners to prevent them from destroying the wall, not that we actually really care, and we're going to burninate him with both the brimstone guns as well as our Scolder Guard and our Fire Drakes. Lovely. That's a Tomb King out, if nothing else. Did he pop the Curse of Jaff, or was that just bleed? I don't know. He did something, and ooh, the Sepulchral Stalkers have arrived, the second most threatening unit on the field, other than the Ushabti with Great Bow. And these guys can take quite a lot of Grudge Raker shots, and they dish out damage much, much faster than we do, as their splash, and, well, they're basically the enemy's own answer to the shotgun concept, like our Grudge Rakers are. And that said, our Grudge Rakers can continue firing on them at least a little bit, while our Brimstone guns fly overhead, in such a way that they can hopefully get behind them and fire at them, though it looks like the enemy will repeatedly turn to specifically focus on the Brimstone guns. Unfortunately for them, we can take advantage of that by moving the gyrocopters around and not allowing the enemy to essentially get into position to fire. That's the dream anyway. Though they'll get a few shots off by the looks of it. At the very least, we don't appear to have lost a model yet, and all 8 of the flyers remain on the field, and all this time, our Grudge Rakers continue to fire, even though it's taken an absolute age to bring these Sepulchral Stalkers down. Yeah, 25 missile resistance on top of 10% physical. Hardly surprising. Alright, well, at least the first unit is in critical binding. We're going to get our flyers out of there right now, because the enemy birdies have arrived. I'm just going to back away, so that the birdies chase them. Oh, and it looks like the Carrion are going to instead charge the closest enemies, which is a unit of Dwarf Warriors. We are finally sending our melee into the gaps in the enemy's settlement. The balance of power is still at this point in the enemy's favor, at about 30% in our favor, and man, what a long battle. But the enemy is once again sallying out to go after us, which means the guns will continue to thunder. Now, what we might have done was to get the units up on top of the walls here rather than breach the walls, but the problem is they had so many Tomb Guard, they all had to be destroyed before we had a chance of doing that, and I just didn't see the likelihood of that being super effective, so I decided to bring all the walls down. Whether we could have done better by sending the Thunderers or possibly the Grudge Rakers up on the walls, maybe, but it would have fully depended on if we could have made a breach and then essentially started ferrying units inside the settlement. Climbing would have done them no favors, as they would have lost in melee against the Tomb Guard, honestly, with or without Vigor loss. Alright, and it looks like this Carrion unit is down as well, adding more corpses to this particular breach. And the enemy did sally out and dish out damage to another unit of Thunderers, which are also routed and backing up, but once again, we still have them acting as the second line. We're also, however, now completely out of ammunition on the Quarrelers, almost completely out of ammunition on the Thunderers. Cannons are basically out, though really only the Grudge Rakers remain, and as I said, they just have plenty of ammunition and they don't care. We also do still have ammunition on our Iron Drakes with flamethrowers, but unfortunately, with the Screaming Skull Catapult watching us here, we can't bring them up to the breach because it'll fire on them. Trying to knock out an enemy Skeleton Archer here to deprive the enemy of its range units, but with a few bomb drops from our flyers, and then back them off. Enemy's doing a great job holding the city, though. I'm absolutely loving it. And balance of power is still in their favor, though, and with us being nearly out of ammunition, it's soon going to be down to whether we can kill the enemy in melee, well, plus the Grudge Rakers, and I don't know whether we can. Alrighty, well, here comes another Rune of Wrath and Ruin right in the middle of the enemy formation, but it's not going to do a crazy amount of damage to them, because after all, these are Necropolis Knights and monstrous cav instead of infantry. Another unit of Sepulchral Stalkers has moved up, and it's probably going to dish out massive damage to these poor Grudge Rakers with their own shotguns. If nothing else, the enemy has shotgun superiority. And it looks like we're going to have to back these guys off lest they die. And the others are trying to escape. This is indeed the Age of Reckoning. I think this campaign is most definitely appropriate for an Age of Reckoning so far, as the Dwarfs have made a very solid amount of progress. Alrighty, and the Necropolis Knights have once again sallied out, which means Thunderers thunder away, or actually mostly Grudge Rakers at this point, as the Thunderers are pretty much all out of ammo. Now it looks like the Grudge Rakers will slowly but surely knock these guys down, as they're trapped and unable to get anywhere. Too bad for them. Huh. I wonder if this would have been better or worse in the field? On the one hand, the enemy would have had a lot more cavalry getting around our flanks, depending on what the terrain looked like and whether we could actually get into a decent position. On the other hand, they would also... we would rather also have a much easier time firing. Anyway, looks like we managed to get at least a few Thunderers on top of the enemy. Well, I was hoping that they would fire down here, but it looks like they actually can't. Or maybe the front row is still unable to get up here. Now, that said, we've now committed both of our lords to the fray, both Alaric and I forget the other guy's name, is Drakebeard, yeah. And Drakebeard and Alaric both in the fight, and the Dwarf Warriors are joining the fray as well. It's meleeing time, considering our range units are pretty much all out of action at this point. Yeah, Thunderers... should have just left you out there to continue using your remaining ammunition, but oh well. And I once again decided to move the Scolder Guard, one of our flamethrower units, close, and once again, that Screaming Skull Catapult targeted us. Absolutely atrocious. The enemy really strongly does not want us to use our flamethrowers, which, you know, to be fair, is appropriate, especially considering the enemy has a fire weakness, I believe, on skeleton units. In fact, they all have fire weakness, so yeah. You can see why they're afraid of fire units, and here comes a fire unit. Speaking of, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass wade into the fray against the enemy Sepulchral Stalkers. I don't know whether they can win it, but they can at least keep the enemy busy and not firing at our other melee units as they make it through the breach. We do have more units on the way. We've been saving our Dwarf Warriors specifically for this purpose, so hopefully they can accomplish a bit. It looks like they've all got reasonable amounts of HP, and with both Alaric and Drakebeard supporting them, they will hopefully do okay. Alright, unfortunately, the tiny amount of Tomb Guard did manage to see those Thunderers off the wall. And I think that was the last unit of Tomb Guard as well. Oh, man. Yeah, well, taking the wall strategy, not super effective. Tried it with a few Thunderers up here as well with Grudge Rakers, but unfortunately they immediately got targeted by the Screaming Skull Catapults. It almost makes me wish that we had a few more units of Flyers. They could have maybe helped here. They didn't necessarily even have to be Brimstone guns. They could have been the Steam ones as well. I don't know, I'll think about it. There's also the fact that the Scolder Guard, the Regiment of Renown Iron Drakes, also fire steam, so that army might have a few gyrocopters, or have a place for a few gyrocopters. And we still have an aerial army to build as well. Anyway, looks like our Brimstone guns are flying around trying to kill off the last remaining units that can actually still fire at them, which in this particular case is those skeleton archer chariots. Kill off those, and it looks like this one's just about done for. And then only the enemy archers and the Screaming Skull Catapults will remain, and that unit of archers is at least too far away currently to fire on us. Unfortunately, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are down to below half HP, infected about a third as Cetra arrives to try to attack, and we've got more Dwarf Warriors heading into the fray, and man, do I wish these were Longbeards, well, hopefully they can continue attacking these guys. The Lords, our two Lords, have still not made it through the press of enemies here, though we are getting a little bit of range support. And they are slowly but surely, once again, grinding them down. What a frickin' epic siege. I absolutely love it. And this is, once again, this is not something that's really possible in vanilla. This siege wouldn't have lasted nearly as long. Kind of echoing several sieges in a few other campaigns that have been epic grinds, but it, it feels like an actual effort to take a settlement, which is super appropriate. Alrighty, and down go these guys. Let's see what we're looking at. These Necropolis Knights, one Necropolis Knight, but wow. Okay, now it's crumbling away. I thought that it was still holding on to its HP with only one, and it was, but then it started crumbling. And there we go. Looks like the force that Cetra led was pretty badly damaged and is now moving in to fight our lords who are remaining in the fray, led by Cetra. That said, that's almost the rest of the enemy units remaining. Gonna pop a few Dwarf Warriors in here and just try to get in here finally with our flamethrower units. Not the best matchup, Dwarf Warriors versus Necropolis Knights, I will grant, but fortunately we do have a little bit of support in the form of our flyers, though just then we run out of ammunition on the gyrocopters, at least one of them, and thus they can no longer fire their brimstone guns. Unfortunately they move into melee because they run out of ammunition. We're going to send them out. Alright, come on, we just got this one unit of Necropolis Knights to destroy. Here come our flamethrowers, burninating whoever they can. Gotta head on in there and destroy this unit, but they do manage to see off that unit of Dwarf Warriors. Can we fire over the rubble here with them? No, apparently not. Well, that's okay. Let them move to where our Lord is still fighting, though we are now sending our ammunition-depleted units in. Some Quarrelers try to fill the gaps here and there. I mean, hybrid units, right? They're decent fighters. Are they, well, 12-17, maybe not decent when they're debuffed by Cetra, but still. They can at least add their bodies to this to try to take damage instead of our Dwarf Warriors. And here come once again the remnants of our brimstone guns firing into the back of those Necropolis Knights. Just a little bit more damage and perhaps they'll start crumbling away. We're going to add a overcast rune of Wrath and Ruin to that, and that honestly didn't look like it did too much, but the Necropolis Knights have started melting. Finally. And it looks like the Nehekara Horsemen have started melting as well. One last sally from these guys as they make it back into the breach, but all that really does is make them go closer together in a narrow firing lane where even if our units are out of ammunition, our last brimstone guns can still get a few more shots off. If our Thunderers are out of ammunition, I mean. Alright, down go the Sepulchral Stalkers, or rather Necropolis Knights, and the last of the units, other than Cetra, have finally crumbled away. Cetra, of course, still fighting, but we have him surrounded, both by the Flamethrowers and the Thunderers. And even though this is going to hurt a few of our own units, we're still going to hit him. Just burn him away. Honestly, since he has that explosion ability on him, allowing him to fight longer will probably do just as much. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. His death is, like, really ragdoll-y. It looks like he just, like, stopped being animate and just, like, sort of slid off the horse. It was so weird. Huh. Are all regular Tomb King deaths like that? I gotta check out another Tomb King death. It just looked very strange. Kind of funny, though. Anyway, with Cetra dead, there is only one enemy unit remaining on the field. Apparently, I actually thought that Cetra was the last, but this archer unit stayed back here all this time. 0 melee attack and 7 melee defense, Alright, well, I would have sent our brimstone guns, but these guys have 12 melee defense, and I just don't trust it. They could have still died. Alright, unfortunately, the fire units did not get to play this time around, so maybe they can at least burninate this barrier a little bit. And the splash shots will actually decimate the enemy range units, and with that, the last few shots from our lords and a heroic victory for these two, surrounded by all of these falling skulls. Man, what a battle. Also, lovely scorpion statue. You get pets, and you get pets. Just for giving us such a fun fight. Man, yeah, completely out of ammunition on pretty much everything, to the point that we had to send in our range units as melee and rely on our Dwarf Warriors to clear it out. It kind of signals to me that the army might need at least a little bit of adjustment, but hey, at least we still pulled it off at the end of the day. Ooh, I gotta say, that was a heck of a grind of a siege. Definitely one of the longest sieges I think I've ever played. I think that was half an hour of just straight up trying to break through the enemy settlement. Obviously, this army... Well, I guess neither of these armies really is designed to do well in siege scenarios. After all, the Thunderers and the Grudge Rakers alike are useless against enemies on the walls, and that was causing us some issues, but otherwise, at least we managed to make it through. Lost about a third of our army, but it still counts apparently as a heroic victory, though you know, hardly surprising considering the relative elite nature of the enemy troops. Now, I am curious. We got 41k damage on Durgrim Drakebeard here. The Grudge Rakers didn't really do that much, but they had to essentially function as pseudo-melee units, so yeah, that's not super surprising. I'm still not super enthused with the unit, or super impressed, rather, with the unit so far, but hey, we'll keep on trying. Maybe they'll get a little bit stronger once our 2 engineers will arrive to help them. Decent amounts of damage on the Dwarf Warriors. In fact, most of the Dwarf Warriors that actually fought a significant amount of time did more damage than the Grudge Rakers, which is a little bit odd. But yeah, it wasn't an ideal situation for them. A little bit of damage on the Quarrelers as well, once again beating most of the Grudge Rakers out, though a few did seem to do well as well. Anyway, heck of a siege, Cetra, absolutely heck of a siege. We could, well, I guess we're going to occupy it for now. We're probably not going to keep Khemri because it's in the desert, we don't really care about it, and it's very, very far. Free Ancestor Rune for Alaric Ranulfson, sure. Hey, another Guildmaster, that's always nice, but no Archivists or Students is a little bit disappointing. Either way, with Khemri ours, we are going to then, I guess, proceed to the next settlement. But I think that was a significant portion of the strength of the Tomb Kings here. I suppose the concern might be as if these guys then attack us again next turn. They do still have a stack and a half.
Summon me if you dare.
And we are damaged. It would be unfortunate to lose both of these guys, but if it happens, well, that's just the nature of the game. Now, are you... No. Nobody's a high enough level to take advantage of this, but I guess we are going to buff up the Longbeards that are eventually going to be in this army, but I guess a bunch of stuff there, really, so yeah. We can't get a Veneration of a God as yet either, so I think that's just fine. You will need to level up as well, once again, in case the enemy attacks. You have 2 levels. Now, you have Tactician. We could probably buff up these cannons. They could have used that little bit of extra ammunition, I think, so cannon buffs it is for you. And then we'll see. Alrighty. What a fun battle. Damn, it's kind of interesting how we're getting fantastic sieges in several campaigns at once. Very recently, both the Krokkar campaign and the Karl Franz campaign, and now the Belegar campaign. So glad to see good sieges in late game. We will not delete any buildings here as yet, and we might as well collect the income. Why are you making so much? 770. Oh, it's because you have a toolmaker's workshop here. I guess we can't build anything special here, but we can build the Goldsmith's Guild Hall. The problem is Qatar is owned by the Lizards, and I was hoping to trade them this stuff for Karagarud and the Obsidian there. I'm sure they'll be glad to take Khemri. Then we could trade Kasabar and Magar to these guys, and then they'll all have some nice territory while we go off and do our own thing without administering these territories, which we don't need to. Anyway, I honestly have absolutely no concept of how long that battle will have taken to comment over, but I think it's 1 episode, 1 battle is what is going to happen, because I'm going to call it here. Yes, we have to end the turn pretty much immediately, but there's several places where we're probably going to get attacked, and we certainly don't have the time to do that now. So I am going to call it here. Next time we shall see where we get attacked, and then if we don't, well, I guess these guys will sit here for a little bit in Khemri while Thorgrim and Svener start advancing this way, because clearly we'll need a little bit of help at taking Kasabar. At least it's highly likely, mostly due to these guys being now too damaged to take it and too slow to recover. This guy's not in fact recovering at all. Ah, dwarfs. Your recovery is so trash. It's kind of hilarious, but anyway, more dwarfs to come, so stay tuned. Don't forget to leave a like and comment. All glory to the algorithm. I'm trying to get that Skull Island. And thanks for watching.